This year's offensive line class is intriguing in the sense that you could have two guards go in the first 15 to 20 picks. You could have potentially offensive tackles go three in the top five, and hell, you never know. Let's roll the dice. You could have offensive tackles go 1, 2, and 3. You could have a total of 7 offensive linemen go in the first round of the 2013 NFL Draft. What that would suggest to you was that this was a great offensive line class with depth, with star power all throughout. That's not necessarily the case. That really isn't. I think where you're seeing these offensive linemen being mocked is more a reflection of the lack of star quality and elite all-pro Hall of Fame level talent in this 2013 draft. And as a result, offensive linemen tend to be viewed as safer picks, which I think kind of sometimes artificially can inflate their draft stock a little bit. But what we do know is that this offensive tackle class, in relation to other positions in this draft, has potentially 4 or 5 of the top 12 to 15 players in this entire draft. Now, offensive tackle, I think it's a position that once you get past the first 7 or 8 guys, it's not all that impressive anymore. I think when you look at guard, to me, there are only 3 to 4 guards that really impress me at all. And there's not really much at center that I really like that much either. So to me, this isn't necessarily a great offensive line class. It's just as much a product of the talent lacking at the very, very top in this draft that causes the offensive line to be viewed in a higher regard than maybe, quite frankly, it deserves to be. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that there isn't talent in this offensive line class. There is. But there are a couple of guys that stand out to me as being very overrated prospects when I watch them on film. That is Barrett Jones from Alabama and Kyle Long from Oregon. Let's take a look at Long first. When you look at him, he's got the pedigree of who his daddy is, Howie, who his brother is, Chris. You look at him, you see a guy with the size, not to play just guard, but potentially the size and athleticism to be able to play left tackle at the NFL level. But when you watch closer, you see a guy that didn't finish blocks. You see a guy who really didn't seem at times to understand what the hell was going on. You saw a guy who looked lost in his blocking. You saw a guy, I think, that at times didn't put forth the greatest effort. You saw a guy, when he played against really good competition, wasn't exactly at his best. The talent is there. The potential is there. The bloodlines are there. But I think there are some things that are real causes for concern. And I'm hearing, Kyle Long, and I probably would agree that he's going to end up getting drafted somewhere before the middle of the second round. Hell, you never know. He could end up getting taken at the very, very bottom of round number 1. But I don't think he deserves to be there. To me, he's more of a 3rd round or 4th round talent in most years. Again, being kind of artificially inflated because teams are looking for athletic upside, and Kyle Long has that in abundance. But just because he has that doesn't necessarily make him a great player or that he's going to be a great NFL player. When I look at Barrett Jones, to me, he's a product of kind of the talent in the system that he played in at Alabama. You have Chance Warmack playing next to you. You have DJ Fluker at right tackle. Some teams I'm sure like Jones's versatility, the fact that he could play center, the fact that he could play guard, the fact that he could potentially play tackle in his own blocking scheme. He could play a little bit at all of those positions, but that doesn't mean that he's great in any one position. This is a guy that I saw on numerous occasions in 2012 at the center position. He's a technique guy, and he really has to rely on technique and being able to wall off people because he's not going to overpower anybody. He gets overwhelmed at times at the point of attack by defensive tackles, nose tackles in particular. And that really has me cause for concern. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not the most athletic guy in the world. He's not the strongest guy in the world. Now, maybe you'd like to have a guy like a Barrett Jones on your offensive line because he's a smart, instinctual football player, understands technique, understands the offense, understands the game plan. He's been a winner. Maybe he's a guy that you like. But when I heard people, a couple months ago talking about Barrett Jones as a 1st-round pick, and as soon as I started watching him more closely, I said, oh, no fucking way. This guy is a 4th-round pick to me at the very best. Now, will he maybe get drafted in the 3rd round? Perhaps. Would I be all that surprised to see a Barrett Jones get drafted in the 5th or 6th round? No, I really wouldn't. But I see some people talking about him as a 1st or 2nd round pick. I say, I don't know what the hell you're watching, but you must not be watching the same Barrett Jones that I am. I also think on the flip side, when you got overrated players, you're also going to have some underrated players. And two that jumped out to me were Justin Pugh from Syracuse and Larry Warford, the guard from Kentucky. When I look at Warford, in a class that has Cooper and Warmack, two guys that you've heard top 10 talk, top 15, top 20 talk, definite first round talk about, a guy like Warford is probably going to get lost in the shuffle a little bit. You know why I like Larry Warford? He's fat. He's a fat ass. I am kind of old school when it comes to my offensive line in the sense that I believe one of your interior linemen, preferably your left guard, needs to be just a big, tough, road grading, mauling fat ass. And when I saw Larry Warford, I do agree with some of the assessments that I've seen that said he was a little bit better as a junior than he was as a senior. I will agree with that. There may be some concerns that he's fat, he's only going to get fatter, and as a result, he might eat himself out of the league. But I tell you what, when I look at his size, and I look at his strength, and I look at his blocking ability, I see a guy that if I was drafting in the bottom portion of round number 2, and I saw Larry Warford on the board, boy, I'd be incredibly tempted to take him because I could view him as being my left guard for the next 10 or 12 years and perhaps even a Pro Bowl caliber talent. I really mean that. Justin Pugh from Syracuse. He has the feet of a left tackle and the arms of a T-Rex. He has very short arms. He almost seems like, because of his short arms, that he should have went to Iowa, where they've had the guys like the Riley Reefs and the Bulagas who have the shorter arms, which some teams don't feel allows them to play left tackle. And when I look at Pugh, it's such a waste to me, the fact that he could potentially be drafted and flipped inside to guard or maybe flipped inside to right tackle, because I do see a guy with incredible feet, very good athleticism for the left tackle position, a guy that I think could play there even with these shorter arms. Is he going to get the chance to play there? I don't know. Is he going to be a guy that probably goes in the top half of round number 2? Probably. Do I think he's going to end up potentially playing like he was a mid or late first round pick for the next 8 or 10 years? Yeah, I really do. I'm a very big fan of him and a very big fan of Warford as well. I said earlier that I believe there could be as many as 3 offensive tackles taken in the top 5, maybe with the first 3 picks in the entire draft, and a total of 7 offensive linemen drafted in round number 1. And I stand behind that. Let's take it from bottom to top. You look at Menelik Watson. He's 24 years old, played right tackle at Florida State, but I think teams are going to project him as a left tackle at the NFL level, which is going to help make him a lot of money. I'd be a little concerned with taking an offensive tackle that was 24 years old in round number 1. Yes, I get that. He also played on the right side at Florida State. Yes, I get that. But some team, always remember, if there's nothing else you ever remember from anything I've ever said about the NFL draft before or since, always remember this one thing that I said. It only takes one team. It only takes one team to fall in love. And I assure you, and I almost promise and guarantee you, that there's going to be one team that views Menelik Watson as a left tackle and a blindside protector for their franchise quarterback, and he's going to get taken around number 1. You have the guards like the Coopers and the Warmacks. Now, I like Warmack and Cooper almost as on an equal playing field. If you like athleticism and versatility, you'll like Cooper a little bit more. If you like just sheer dominance and effectiveness at one position, you're going to like Warmack a little bit more. I tend to like Warmack just a little bit more, even though I really do like Cooper's athleticism and versatility. To me, Warmack is just a fucking stud. He's a hammer at left guard, and he's that big, road-grading, all-purpose left guard that I think you need in the interior of your line. I asked the Cowboys how much better off they were in the 90s once Larry Allen came into the fold. You look at offensive tackles like DJ Fluker. Now, it's very interesting that you're going to hear some top 10, top 15 buzz about him, and that's probably in the range he'll go, somewhere between, maybe pick 7 to pick 15, somewhere in there, even though more likely than not, he's going to have to play right tackle at the NFL level. Now, maybe he will be able to hack it at left tackle, but I don't see it yet. Now, some teams are going to look at him as a right or left guard, and that may improve his draft value because of that positional versatility. But if I'm going to take somebody to be a guard, I would rather take Cooper or Warmack before I would Fluker, just because they've actually played the position. They have experience. They will take less coaching to be able to get how to play guard at the NFL level compared to Fluker, who played on the outside. When I see Fluker, I see quite a bit of, it's a lazy comparison, but I think it's appropriate, somebody like Andre Smith. Now, the top 3, or the perceived top 3 left tackles in this draft, in some particular order, for most people are Luke Joeckel, Eric Fisher, and Lane Johnson. And I think Lane Johnson is one of those guys that he's one of those workout warriors that he impresses you with his size, athleticism, combination, and you just drool over what could be. He reminds me a little bit of Jason Peters in terms of a converted tight end who had great athleticism, good feet at the position, but it wasn't really a tackle yet, and it took time for him to develop into that. But Jason Peters at one point in time was one of the very, very best left tackles in all football. Lane Johnson potentially does have that type of upside. But is he that type of player yet? No. Do I think he's worth a top 10 pick? No. Is he going to go in the top 10? Oh, you better fucking believe he's going to. Because teams have overvalued and overrated, quite frankly, a little bit, the offensive tackle position in recent years in the draft. He's going to be viewed as a safer pick, even if he has some risk associated to him. Now, I know that Luke Joeckel has pretty much been mocked almost unanimously to go number 1 to the Kansas City Chiefs. Joeckel is a nice player. To me, he reminds me of Matt Khalil. He's a not quite as good version of Matt Khalil. And I wasn't a huge fan of Khalil, but that's what Joeckel kind of reminds me of. He's in that mold of a Matt Khalil. A guy that does deserve to be a top 10 pick, probably a top 5 pick in most drafts. But number 1 overall, especially when I don't think he's the best left tackle prospect in this draft. I think that's Eric Fisher from Central Michigan. I really do. When I'm looking for a left tackle, ultimately I'm looking for a guy that has the feet and the ability to move from side to side and be able to hold up at the point of attack and protect that quarterback's blind side. And when I'm looking at upside, when I'm looking at those feet, when I'm looking at athleticism, I think Eric Fisher has the best combination of everything. Joeckel's not going to be a bust. He'll be a very good NFL tackle. Johnson has a little bit of bust, potential to him. But I think Fisher has the most upside. If I had to gamble and say which one of these offensive tackles is the most likely to be a perennial Pro Bowler and maybe an all-pro talent, I think is going to be Eric Fisher from Central Michigan.